welcomed into some kind of unspoken fellowship of Mount Clare women as they all hugged and wiped tears and prepared food in the kitchen. And Free was so little, only 11. She was passed around the adults and cuddled, allowed to have a tantrum over some random thing, and showered with gifts that might distract her. Willow vividly recalled the games and toys Free had been given. She wished a jigsaw puzzle or a collectible teddy bear could have been enough to give her some comfort. So she locked herself in her room and cried the worst cry of her life. It was like she'd utterly lost control of herself. Sobs racked her body so hard she might as well have been thrown around, dumped, and battered by rough waves in the ocean. Her lungs heaved and her heart felt like it might explode. Even her skin hurt, as though all the pain of the past 3 months since her mother's diagnosis was finally coming out, pushing out through each pore. Like sweating concrete. She'd locked the door, but suddenly it started rattling. Someone was banging on the other side. Then it went quiet. Banjo? Tom. No, he couldn't see her like this. She held still, praying he'd go away, trying to breathe through the stupid, sodden sandbags that her lungs had become. I know you're in there. Willow didn't answer. A huge sob threatened, so she shoved a pillow over her face to muffle it. Let me in. More banging. Piss off, Tom Forrest. For a moment, she thought her angry voodoo had worked. But then she heard something, like a scratching on the handle, and seconds later the door opened and he slipped inside, holding a butter knife. The bastard had picked her lock. She flew to her feet and tried to push him out, but he wouldn't budge. Even at 14, he'd been strong. She gave up trying and slammed the door shut again. She wanted to scream at him to leave her alone, but couldn't formulate any words. Instead, she dropped back onto her bed and turned towards the headboard so he couldn't see her face. She pulled her knees up to her chest and tried to hold the sobs inside. The mattress sank behind her as he sat down. You okay, Banjo? No, she wasn't okay, goddammit. How could anyone be okay in her situation? Her body betrayed her, a sob escaping. He touched her shoulder and she lashed out like a wildcat, wanting to hurt someone, something, the world, wanting to unleash all her fury. She tried to hit Tom, thrashing and slapping at his face. He caught both her wrists and held them in a firm grip while she heaved, aching, hysterical sobs. Then he pulled her into a hug, wrapping his long arms around her, holding her tight. It took a long time for her to stop fighting him. It was only the sound of Tom crying that stopped her struggle in the end. She lifted her swollen eyes to his, saw his tears pouring, and lost her will to fight. She went limp, and he dragged her closer, weeping with her. Somehow, when he broke down, it had helped. He hadn't lost his mother, but he was crying as though he had. It took her years to realize he'd been crying for her, aching with her, feeling her pain. Whenever things felt difficult, Willow's instinct was to clam up and go it alone, and it had been that way for as long as she could remember. Maybe that was what he was talking about today. She thought over the past few months since she'd been back in Mount Clare. She was definitely hiding things from her father, but she had a reason for that. Tom had broken down her defences a little. She would reluctantly explain her problems if he prodded enough. She let Beth in more than most. She'd told Beth the truth about the pact and the bust-up between her and Tom. As for Free, even when her younger sister had hugged her while she cried in the office,